Am I the asshole for being mad at my husband for saying that he would choose his deceased wife over me? My husband was married once before me. She was his high school sweetheart. They started dating in their junior year of high school, and they survived long distance in college, and then they got married when they were 23. Very shortly after college, she passed away at 26, very unexpectedly. She had an aneurysm, and he was obviously devastated, especially because they were so young at the time. They never had children. He contemplated remarrying because he was so heartbroken, but we ended up meeting each other about 4 years after that. We got married when I was 31, he was 34, and we have 2 children together. Last night we were at a little friend potluck get-together thing, and everything was going really well until one of our friends brought up a new topic of relationships. She's newly divorced, so it was about her divorce. Others were chiming in about their past relationships from high school, college. I had said that I never thought that I was gonna get married because my luck with men was always so horrible, and then I met my husband, and I'm so grateful to have met him and to have him in my life. After a little while longer, he brings up his deceased wife. All of our friends know that he was married before me and that she passed away pretty young. So he was talking about her, and then he all of a sudden just drops a bomb and goes, if she walked through those doors right now, we would just pick up where we left off. If I'm being totally honest, it felt like someone put my heart in a blender and literally kicked me in the gut as hard as they could. And everyone there could definitely sense the awkwardness that followed. I wanted to avoid making a scene, so I just laughed it off, but I think it was pretty obvious that it definitely hurt me. I just feel like if you really feel that way, then why are we married? I have never once asked him to get over his wife. I mean, I've never had a deceased partner or a deceased spouse, so I have no idea what that feels like. But I would absolutely never say that in front of my new spouse. After the gathering, I barely spoke to him on the drive home, and not even the entire night after that. I did tell him that what he said hurt me and that we could talk about it in the morning after I've calmed down a little bit because I didn't want to say anything mean to him. But I ended up just sleeping on the couch because he would not leave me alone about it. It's now the next morning and I barely slept and he's still sleeping. I'm not really sure what to say or do about this situation.
I told my mom and her new boyfriend that they could not share a room or a bed together in my home. Let's get into it. My college boyfriend and I had been together for about a year before we decided to move in together with some friends. And at the time that we met, so at the time we started dating, I was 19, and when we moved in together, I was 20, and we were the same age. At this point, we were pretty serious in our relationship, and that's when we decided our families live in different areas. That's when we decided that we would take turns spending Christmas with each of our families. So the first year we had planned to spend Christmas with mine. Now, before we got there, my mom made it very clear that we were to not be sleeping in the same bedroom together. And at first it was kind of a little annoying because I was an adult and we were living together, and my dad felt the same way as I did. And so he tried to argue with my mom for me, like in agreement that I was an adult and I could make my own decisions, and my mom was very adamant that it was her house and her rules. So out of respect for her, we decided to get an Airbnb. That way we didn't have to worry about it. Again, my boyfriend and I had been living together for about a year at this point, so we were obviously sleeping together. Got to get some new concealer. Anyway, my mom was furious at the fact that we got the Airbnb and that I wouldn't just respect her rules and stay at her house. And I told her that I was trying to respect her rules, but I didn't want my boyfriend to have to sleep on the couch, uncomfortable couch at that, or have to get a hotel and be by himself. So the Airbnb just made sense for us. And honestly, his family had welcomed us with open arms and had no issue with us sleeping together because, again, we'd been living together for so long. But we decided that the first year would be spent with my family. And so we were already making like accommodations for my family because my mom really wanted us to spend Christmas with her. So I felt like the least I could do is not make him have to stay by himself. This part is important because after that visit, I made it very clear to my mom that I wouldn't be coming to visit if that was going to be the rule, if we couldn't stay together, because then we were having to spend extra funds on a place to stay, and we were still in college, so we didn't have all the extra funds to be able to do that. And she said that we weren't married and that was her rule, and so I respected that. Fast forward to now, unfortunately, about 2 years ago, my father suddenly passed away, and the family obviously had a very hard time with that. But for the past 11 months, my mom has had a new boyfriend. And that's not to say that I'm not happy for her. I want her to be happy and move on with her life and live her life to the fullest that she can. They don't live together. Now, my baby brother still lives at home. He is 22. He is an adult, but he still lives at home. And while the boyfriend and my mother don't live together, Per my brother, he's over there most nights, pretty often. And by being there most nights, I mean like staying over most nights. My mom and my brother have been struggling a little bit in their relationship, and I personally think that it does have a little bit to do with the new boyfriend. My brother and my dad were super close, and so it only makes sense that he was just having a really hard time with this new boyfriend always being around and kind of feeling like he's taking dad's spot, even though he's not. That's just kind of how he felt in the moment. So like I said, he's 22, he's an adult, so he decides that it's time for him to move out. This immediately makes my mom furious. She cannot believe or understand why all of a sudden he's wanting to move out. And I think a lot of it comes from their own emotions, right? Like my brother's upset because my mom's moved on, and my mom's upset because she thinks that my brother's not happy for her for moving on after our dad passed away. And that's just not the case at all. That's not what's happening at all. I think it's just hard on my brother. Naturally, it's kind of hard on all of us. She's having a hard time understanding that. So it's been a few months now since my brother's moved out, and my mom is really, she's an empty nester now. So she's really been missing her kids and being around her kids. So she called me last week and said that she wants to come up for a visit, and she wants to stay about a week or two here real soon, and she wants to bring her new boyfriend, which again, totally fine. I don't mind that he's coming, but what I said really made her mad. I just informed her that that was totally fine, but that they would not be sharing a room or a bed together in my home, and she lost her mind. She started yelling. She is a grown woman and she is to be treated as such. She is an adult. She can make her own decisions and her own choices. And I quickly reminded her of my situation and how it was when I tried to bring my boyfriend, now husband, home for the holidays, and how she treated us literally until we were married. And remember, her and her boyfriend are not married. They are not legally married. So no sharing a bed in my house. My mom informs me that her boyfriend won't come if he can't stay with her. And I tell her that's fine too. And honestly, I don't really care if he comes or not. I'm happy to see my mom and I want to see her, but it's been an adjustment for all of us with this whole boyfriend, and I respect him. I have no ill will towards him, but it's just going to take some time. Obviously, it's going to take some time. And this is the first time they would be coming up for a visit with me. And so, no, I don't want them in my house. And, maybe I'm being a little bit, what's the word? Immature, like holding a grudge. I don't know what you would call it. Maybe I am, but either way, I feel like my feelings are a little bit different in the situation because this is the first person we've seen her with outside of my dad. And I know that he passed 2 years ago, but that still seems like not that long ago. We still very much are mourning him and missing him. And we've gone through all of our first holidays without him. And he's missed so much, but also it feels like it just happened yesterday. So it's just an adjustment. It takes an adjustment, and I don't feel like she's respecting our emotions while we're all trying to make that adjustment. So what do you think? Do you think I'm being petty and I should allow my mom and her new boyfriend to come and stay in my house in the same room? Or do you think that I should stand my ground and I am valid in my feelings of not wanting to see them together in that intimate way?
My boyfriend refuses to buy me female products, pads, and now I'm upset. I'll keep this short and sweet. I, 25 female, and my boyfriend, 28 male, have been dating for over 3 years. Yesterday, we had a conversation through text message about him going to the supermarket to get pasta because we were having people over for dinner and I was going to cook. Mind you, he gets out of work before me and the supermarket is 3 minutes away from home. Everything was fine until my period started right before I was about to leave to go home. I texted him to please grab me some pads, and his answer was, "I'm not doing that." Then I said, "I'm going home. They're in the personal hygiene section. I need them." His answer was, "So go and get them." I replied, "Aren't you going to the store?" He said, "Yeah." So I then asked again, "Will you please get them for me?" His answer was, "I said I'm not doing that, but you keep asking." I ended the conversation by saying, "Okay, thanks. Girl, you better than me. You better than me because I'll be asking him, so you don't have no problem with climbing up in it. But when it needs something, you're not going to do it? All right, I'll remember that. I will remember that. Don't you ever bring that Peter Witter over here ever fucking again if you're not willing to help me do the things that I need to keep her together." He then said we shouldn't have people over tonight, which made me even more upset. I ended up getting them myself while being in pain and having a bunch of toilet paper wrapped around my underwear to not make a mess. I always say it's not about what you say, it's how you say it. If he feels uncomfortable, he could have said, "I'm sorry, but that makes me uncomfortable, so I won't be able to do so." I could have seen it with a different perspective. However, he's 28, and I think that's a very immature thing to be embarrassed about. Absolutely. In my opinion, you're 28 fucking years old. Everybody in the motherfucking building knows these things are not for you. What the fuck is there to be embarrassed about? Oh my gosh, I can't touch the clean pads wrapped in a bag. That's embarrassing. Why? That's a fucking flex in my opinion. That means somebody knows you got a girl at home somewhere. What girl? They can make up in their own motherfucking mind. But you're flexing because you're a man. A man goes and buys period products for his fucking woman. A little boy will be embarrassed about it. Before you ask, this was my second time asking him to do this for me. The first time, he got it with no problem. But we were living at his mom's house, and she used to do everything for him. So at this point, I think she was the one that got them instead. Please give me advice. Edit. Thank you for all the feedback, and I would like to add an anecdote. 2.5 years ago, he had a horrible accident while skiing. He fractured his right leg and dislocated his left shoulder, so he couldn't move at all, shower, or even pee or poop. Guess who helped him with all of that? Me. So he was in an accident that required you to help him wipe his ass. But he could not go into the store that he was already going into to get you fucking pads because it was embarrassing. What the fuck? Nah, baby. I'll give you some advice. Take him back to his mama house. I would expect him to do the same thing for me, but not being able to do this little thing for me, honestly, might be a deal breaker. Call me dramatic. I don't care. There's absolutely nothing dramatic about it. This man was in a situation where he needed you for everything. He needed you to wipe his ass, to take him to the bathroom, to bathe him. But you're in a situation where all he literally has to do is go to a different aisle in a store he's already in to get something that you need. It's not something you want. You weren't bitching about him bringing you your favorite fucking cookies. Your uterus was literally fucking shutting. You had nothing that you needed, and you asked him, since you're already out, please grab them. But this was not something that his delicate hands could do. He could not touch the girly products. Ma'am, and you're asking for advice. Why are you with someone who's not going to do for you what you're willing to do for them? Like, it's clear as fucking day. You wiped his ass. He can't buy you pads. You guys are not equal in this relationship. Like, no, hell no. He's going to take a hell of a lot more than he can give. He's used to people doing for him. He's not going to do anything for you. Don't give him the opportunity to prove that. Do not stay with this man when there's a possibility something could happen to you and he's just going to leave you high and fucking dry. He's not going to take care of you. My advice, take this motherfucker back to his mama and leave him there. Don't answer any text messages or phone calls. I don't know about anybody else, but to me, this is a real deal fucking deal breaker because every man in my life has always been willing to do this. Like, my dad did it for my mom. My brother did it for his baby mama. He did it for me. My dad's done it for me. My grandfather has done it for me. All of my boyfriends, every boyfriend I've ever had has done it for me because I can't be with somebody who's not going to help me when there's something going down that I literally cannot stop. Like, this is enough for me to call off the entire relationship. I don't give a fuck how long we've been together. This is not something that I could get past.
Am I wrong for wearing white to a wedding and having an entire bottle of wine spilled on me? Recently, I went to my uncle's wedding. Him and his now wife are in their 40s and they're very well established and well off. Okay, to give you some context, her engagement ring was worth over $50,000. Yeah, like really well off. I cannot even describe to you how insanely beautiful this wedding was. It was held at this giant mansion and it was a pretty intimate event. There was only about 40 of us there. Let me tell you, I lost track of the number of courses of food we ended up getting. It was insane. The florals everywhere. And you know how expensive flowers are. That is one of the most expensive parts of a wedding. This is a very important point, so listen up. They wanted absolutely no gifts. They had no gift registry. They wanted nothing for their honeymoon fund. All they wanted was for everyone to dress very nice, very black tie. They, put so much effort into this wedding and they just wanted the photographs to come out beautifully and they wanted everyone to be dressed super formal. So they said that instead of putting money into a gift for them, put money into whatever you were going to wear to the wedding. And I was fine with that because if you know me, you know I love a good outfit. Here's the part where maybe I messed up. I don't know. You have to tell me. But I decided that I wanted to go with a black dress. I just think that that's so timeless, so classic. And my mom and I decided to go shopping together. And I was trying on all of these black floor-length gowns. And my mom was like, I hate them. I hate them all. Kelsey, we're not going to a funeral, okay? We're going to a wedding. You cannot have just this black dress. I don't agree with her. I thought they were beautiful, but if you know, you know. Sometimes you just got to agree with your mom. It's easier. My mom and I end up compromising on this dress that's beautiful. It's a black floor-length gown, but it has white lace appliques on the top and the bottom of the dress that just softens it up a little bit. It made it a little less, as my mom called it, gothic. Mom, like, do you see, like, I don't give gothic vibes, I don't think, but apparently to my mom, an all black dress was going to do that. So this dress was a little bit in the middle, and my mom actually loved it. I loved it. It was a black dress still, okay? It just had some, white, almost ivory appliques. Okay, flash forward back to the wedding. We were having the main course of food, and there was a different wine that was served with each course. The main course was this really nice red wine. I'm sitting there enjoying my meal, and all of a sudden, I feel my shoulder starting to get wet. A server drops an entire freshly uncorked bottle of red wine all over me. And it wasn't like it just tumbled off. It literally just fell over on the serving tray that they were holding, and it just started guzzling out. And you would think that the server would see that the wine was spilling and then be like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, move it. No, the server just continued to let the wine continue to run until I jumped up. So it was probably 7/8 of the bottle of this red wine that spilled on me, which is kind of what made me a little suspicious. Why would the server have just kept letting the wine drip down on me if it wasn't intentional? But I was like, oh, maybe they didn't see it. Maybe they didn't notice. It's loud, it's busy, they're working, but I don't know. But after this mishap, my uncle actually had that server removed from the wedding altogether. This wasn't the first mishap that the server had made. Apparently, there was a full tray of champagne, and the server dropped that, and it shattered everywhere. So my uncle was like, you know what? First mistake, understandable. Second, gotta go. Actually, my new aunt was also furious about the situation and ended up contacting the company, and the company did end up paying to dry clean my dress because that dress was soaked. All the white applique was maroon, okay? Cue the Taylor Swift song. So at this point, just based on the reactions of my uncle and my new aunt, I'm thinking that it was totally just an unfortunate mishap, but maybe not. My cousin was sitting on the opposite end of the table as me, and she said that she saw the server look down at the fallen over wine bottle as it was spilling all over me and not move, not do anything to fix it. Didn't even have a look of shock on their face. Sometimes people have the freeze response when something happens. It wasn't like the waitress was and didn't know what to do. She was just staring at it my cousin was somebody told that server to do that. I'm sure of it. I was like, what are you talking about? I did not get any inkling of any bad vibes that entire day from anyone. It was really just a beautiful ceremony. The reception was drama-free. And my cousin was like, well, probably because you were wearing white to the wedding. I was like, I wore white to the what? What are you talking about? She's like, yeah, you had white details on your dress. Somebody was probably really upset about that. Oh no. I told her, listen, I know the white at wedding rules. I would have never worn a white dress. This was a black dress. It just had white details. It looked nothing like a wedding dress. If I even for a second thought that there would be an issue with that dress, I obviously wouldn't have worn it. And my cousin was like, I don't know. I know it was a black dress, but some people might have thought it was inappropriate for a wedding. Are people that strict about the no white at weddings rules? I just thought I wasn't allowed to wear a white dress. I wouldn't have worn even a pastel dress that was close to white. I literally wore a black dress. Now I feel so bad. Was I in the wrong for wearing a black dress with white lace appliques to a wedding? Also, do you think that spill was on purpose or not? Maybe I should call my aunt and just figure out if she was upset, because obviously she's the bride, her opinion matters, but I truly am so confused. I don't know. Was I the villain here? I didn't even think there was a villain. I just thought it was a simple mistake, but maybe I was in the wrong.
Am I the arsehole for ditching the girls' holiday on the way to the airport? Story time. Now, I was supposed to go on a girls' holiday with my longtime friend. We'll call her Amy. Me and Amy have been friends for 10 years. So this holiday is going to be me and Amy and then this other girl. We'll call this other girl Lucy. I don't know that this bronze is going to be dark enough. I had heard loads about Lucy from Amy, all good things. In my head, this whole situation was going to be great. Amy and Lucy only live 3 hours from where we were going on holiday. and they were going to drive, and they did invite me, by the way. However, this would mean me driving from my house down to them, then over to where we were going on holiday. Now, it didn't make any sense for me to drive because I could fly there quicker than I could drive to where they live. Now, literally the day before we are going, Amy sends me a link to this museum and says that they have already booked their ticket, so I need to book mine. And it was time slots. They had booked their tickets for, I think it was 11:30. Why I'm using this tiny one. I went on to book my slot. They only had 8:30 in the morning available. Now, I was like, doesn't matter, I will just do something else that day. I wasn't too bothered about going to that museum. Now, Amy had done the majority of the booking for this trip. She had done all of the hotels, the accommodation, all of that. I texted her and I was like, how much do I owe you? Bearing in mind, I had asked her at the time that she booked it. So this was the second time me asking her how much I owed her. Now, I didn't play a role in booking anything. Amy and Lucy did everything, so I just assumed that I would send them the money when the time was right. So the morning of my flight comes around. I am sat at the airport and I get a text. This is not the right shade. We're going to make it work. Now, Amy in this text is just letting me know that they had ended up asking a guy to come along on the trip and that he would now be staying in the hotel room that was meant for me. Amy then sends me a link to the hotel so I can book a new hotel room. However, all of the rooms were now fully booked for that night. Isn't that just fantastic? Now, as I'm sure you can imagine, at this point, your girl is starting to panic a little bit. I'm going on my bloody holiday and I've not got anywhere to stay. I'm checking all of the hotels in this area. Everywhere is fully booked. There is no room at the inn. Tell you what, there is a lot of makeup on my face right now. I found one hotel. And for reference, the original hotel was going to be about 250 quid. The cheapest available option to me was £475. Double the price. I don't think I'll be paying that. Now, I really wanted to go on this little trip. I haven't seen my girls in so long. So I just bit the bullet and I booked the hotel. And then all of a sudden I just get this gut feeling that I'm actually not gonna have a good time. And I went home. But I messaged Amy and I'm like, hi babe, listen, I'm gonna sit this one out. Now, in this message, I make it very clear that I was expecting a girls trip and now Steve's joining. Now, Amy is being a little rat bag. She's convinced that I'm being so unreasonable here. So all of this is my doing. So what do you think? Do you think I'm being the arsehole here?
My partner thinks we're just casual.
What's going on? Do y'all not talk?
My quote-unquote partner was in my wider friendship circle for about a year when I told him I was interested in him and wanted to get to know him better. He told me it was a bad time for him to get into a relationship because he would be leaving town to work for his cousin in another state in a couple of weeks and that he did not expect to come back. We spent a lot of time together in those 2 weeks, hiking, having dinner together, but not having sex. We stayed in contact when he moved and he was unhappy there and decided to come back a month later. He hinted that I was a factor in coming back. I was already planning to move because I wanted to get a dog and my landlord didn't want a dog. When he decided to come back, we rented a place together. To start with, we had separate bedrooms and would sleep over in each other's rooms whenever we had sex. We shared 2 puppies. We each owned one, but they were adopted from the same litter, and a car with a couple of weeks of moving in together. We have always done joint food shops and he does all the cooking while I do all the cleaning since day one. We have not quote unquote paid each other back or kept account of things that we have paid for, including car expenses for our shared car or vet bills for the puppies. So we have totally combined our finances. We were making financial plans to buy another car in the spring. Due to flood damage, we had to move to a different house in October. Since we lived in the new house, we have had a shared bedroom. I have had a home office and our spare room was set up for his son.
There was a son in the equation too?
We were talking about our future together and we have already bought tickets to go on a holiday together in March. He has booked a vasectomy because we do not want to have children and I do not feel well on hormonal birth control. I have met his son and his siblings and have spoken to his parents. He has met my sister, brother-in-law, and nephews. I was invited to spend Christmas with his parents, but we ended up staying here instead. All this to say, I thought we were together in a normal, if slightly rushed, relationship. We have never actually had a conversation where one of us asked the other, would you like to be my boyfriend or girlfriend? But does anyone say that in their 30s? We've told each other that we love each other. We've had conversations about our future together, and we live like a couple. We have also discussed getting married before my current visa runs out. His suggestion, not mine. I got my current visa through my work, and there is no reason to think that they won't get me a new one. We ended up spending Christmas together at our house. It was a quiet one, movies, good food, and walking the dogs. In the evening, a female friend of his came to our door, clearly drunk and upset. I have never met her before. He introduced us, told me she was a childhood friend, and that she had some bad news. I went to the bedroom to give her some privacy, as she was obviously upset, and I watched a movie. After the movie, I went back down to the kitchen to see how things were going. They were snuggled up in his son's bedroom. His son was obviously not there. She was asleep in his arm. I was furious and asked him to come out to the kitchen to talk. He said they hadn't had sex and that they were just good friends, like me and him. I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was something about how I am his girlfriend and she is a woman he hasn't seen for years. That's not the same. He started to reply, but she heard what I said, confirmed they didn't have sex, apologized, and left. We didn't speak after that. I went to bed and he slept in his son's room. Yesterday, I asked him to move out. The rental contract is in my name and I paid all of the deposit. He maintains that he thought he was single the entire time because he told me it was a bad time for him to get into a relationship back in March.
The hell is happening right now?
Apparently, there was one time when I was giving him oral sex when he asked me, "This is just sex, right?" And I said yes. I have no recollection of this at all, but he took that as confirmation that we had a casual arrangement. He thought we were just best friends, apparently. He also told me that he has had sex with 2 other women in our house since we have been living together.
Oh.
I had no idea. One was while I was out of town, and the other was a friend of his who stayed in our guest room at the old house for a week while she was on a holiday. I feel like I'm going insane. I thought I had been living with my partner for 8 months, but it turns out he thought we were not even in a relationship. I can't believe this never came up in conversation. He is angry that I never told him what I wanted. Apparently, he feels like I lied to him. He thought we were just best friends, and when I listed all the couple-ish things that we have done for each other, he was indignant and said that he would never even have accepted so much as a slice of bread from me if he knew I was counting up his debts.
Bullshit. To me, honestly, it feels like he got caught and is now backpedaling and being like, "Oh, I thought we were just friends. Like, this isn't cheating. We're just friends." And it's like, I feel he just doesn't want to admit that he's a cheater.
Am I the asshole for telling my mom she won't be able to see my daughter for 2 months after she's born if she calls my wife to complain about her birth plan again? 33 male. My wife is currently 7 months pregnant with our daughter. The first time she was pregnant, she went into premature labor and had a stillbirth. It was a devastating experience for both of us, but especially my sweet wife. She's finally getting excited about this pregnancy, but there is a part of her that is afraid to get her hopes up in case something goes wrong. She asks me several times a day if I think something will happen and has been having nightmares about having another stillbirth. Luckily, her doctor says everything is going well so far, and I'm confident everything will work out okay this time. My wife and I are from the same town, but live around 9 hours driving distance from our families. Right now, the plan is for my wife's mother to drive up once my wife goes into labor. She's going to support my wife during the labor and also stay for a week or so after the baby is born to help us get settled. My wife explicitly said that she doesn't want any visitors aside from her mom for the first few weeks after the baby is born. She told me she wants my family to visit a few weeks after the baby is born and even said my parents could stay in the guest room so they get more quality time with their granddaughter once we're ready for visitors. I truly want this process to go as smoothly as possible for my wife in light of what she went through the last time around, and so I'm 100% behind whatever plan makes her the most comfortable. Yesterday I got a call from my mom asking about the birth plan. I explained our current plan and my mom said that she and my dad would drive up once my wife goes into labor. She didn't mention being in the delivery room, but said they'd be in the waiting room to meet their granddaughter. She also said they stay at a hotel nearby and so they could spend time with the baby once she's home. I told my mom that we're excited for her to come up and meet the baby, but we'd prefer if she wait a few weeks until we're settled. My mom said that my mother-in-law is coming right up after the birth, and so she doesn't understand why she can't be there. I explained that mother-in-law is there to support my wife during the labor and help her get settled after the baby is born. I added that my wife obviously feels more comfortable with her mom and doesn't feel pressured to have the house spotless and be the perfect hostess when her mom comes over. I also said that we want her and my dad to get a lot of time with the baby, and we don't know how my wife is going to be feeling immediately after the birth. My mom started rambling about how boy moms always get the short end of the stick and everyone should be included when it comes to major milestones like the birth of a child. I responded to my mom by asking why she's okay with my sister keeping her baby away from her mother-in-law for 6 months if everyone should be included. My mom was furious. She said that there was more to the situation than I realized and that this situation is completely different since she's always been perfectly nice to my wife. I asked what I was missing, and my mom just said that my sister's mother-in-law ruined her bridal shower by bringing her obnoxious friends. That's crazy, and you kept her away from her grandchild for 6 months, but this poor girl wants like couple weeks to herself so she can recoup after like a major loss before she sees her mother-in-law or people visiting her house. God forbid you protect your peace. I said, regardless of the situation, I want to make this experience as stress-free as possible for my wife, given what happened last time. I said that she just wants me and her mom for a while, and I understand her perspective. I told mom I love her and I'm excited for her to visit, and will make sure she gets plenty of time with her granddaughter. She seemed disappointed, but I thought we were on the same page. A few hours ago, my wife told me that she got a call from my mother. Of course she did. She said my mom was crying and saying she felt excluded, like we didn't want her to meet the baby. My wife is a sweetheart and a people pleaser, and she truly took this to heart. She seemed stressed and asked me if we were doing the right thing. I told my wife I wanted her to feel as comfortable as possible and that I'd deal with my mom moving forward. I was furious, to say the least. The stress isn't good for my wife, and she's already under a lot of it because of her fears that history will repeat itself. I called my mom back and told her that if she calls my wife about the situation again, she won't get to see the baby for 2 months. I said I'd add a month for every call after that. I meant this kind of as a joke, but I was being serious that she can't be putting the stress on my wife right now. My mom said we were excluding her and my father and that they raised me better than this. My dad called and said I was wrong to give my mom an ultimatum and punish her for expressing her feelings. He said that I was using the time with the baby as a form of control. I explained that I want them to have a good relationship with my kid, but I desperately don't want any extra stress on my wife right now. My dad says I owe my mom an apology for saying I'll add months to the wait time every time she speaks to my wife about the birth plan. I disagree. Am I the asshole? No. Okay, I just want to say I gotta give my props to OP because I read a lot of shitty men story on here. Shitty husband, a lot of people on, just shitty people in general. And I love that you are trying everything in your power to protect your wife's state of mind and you are putting her first, as you should. And I really, really want to know that people will appreciate that. Like, she's so lucky to have you and you're lucky to have her. And like, that is such a traumatic thing to go through, is like going through the 9 months of having a pregnancy and then having a stillborn. People don't know how that feels until that happens to you. And so I respect so much that you're trying to protect your wife as much as you possibly can and giving her whatever she wants. I honestly do not think her ass is that big. The fact that your own sister got to keep her baby away from her in-laws for 6 months because of a bridal shower pettiness is crazy. But you want to keep your wife's sanity for like 3 weeks and your mom's throwing a fit? Absolutely not. You see how she's playing the boy mom thing, but look, for her own daughter, look what she was okay to cover with. You get it? No, I don't think it's whatever your wife wants, honestly. This is like your mom is using this vulnerability to make it about herself and claiming it's about one parent being favored over the other. And then about her being a boy mom and about her importance relative to your nuclear family that you have built with your wife. The baby represents a power struggle. It's like a pecking order about who ultimately gets to make decisions and set boundaries when it comes to the family. Your nuclear family is what's most important. But some parents just don't understand that. That's why I'm really grateful of like my mom. I keep bringing up my mom, but my mom always emphasized like that your core family, that nuclear, like is your first responsibility. Your kids, your wife, that family that you choose to build on is what you need to focus on. We'll be here. We're here for help, right? Our needs are not important right now. Our needs are whatever you need, right? As a sister, as a mom, as a cousin, as a whatever it is. It's like, hey, I got to make sure you're having a child with someone. How can I be here to help? Okay, whatever you need, let me know. Instead of being like, I'm a boy mom.
That's Kenji, and she just found out the guy she's been dating has a live-in girlfriend. So they've been talking since a little before Thanksgiving, and she thought she found her like a real winner. She felt like he was really kind, he was really passionate about, their connection and them getting to know each other. And not to mention, he was also studying to be a psychologist, so he was just like so good at handling her emotions and talking her through things, and she kept reiterating that he handled her with such care. So they initially met on Twitter. She posted like a little cute picture on Twitter and he ended up liking it. They talked on Twitter for a little bit and then ultimately they ended up talking on Instagram, and that's where the conversation really took off. And, he lives in California, she lives in Jersey. Off bat, it was a long distance relationship. And so they start planning to like meet somewhere. Now he's a really big Eagles fan. So at first they had planned to meet in like Wyoming, somewhere random, and go to a game together. They quickly realized though that Kenji had just started a new job and there was no way she was going to have any paid time off. So they had to kind of like kick the can a little further down the road. So they just started discussing like maybe just possibly meeting in Philadelphia. This whole time they're FaceTiming, they're talking, they're texting all day long. Like they're having constant communication. When he initially reached out to her, Kenji didn't really actually know if he was interested in her or not, but when they got on their first FaceTime call, he was like, oh wow, you're like just as pretty as you are on Twitter in real life. Like, I'm impressed kind of thing. She was like, okay, maybe he is romantically interested. So that's when they first started talking, right? And then she ends up going on a work trip. She goes on the work trip. She's exhausted. She gets back and he wants to like FaceTime. Like he's used to their routine, right? And she's just like, dude, I'm tired. I don't really feel like entertaining anybody right now. I just like want to relax and chill out and kind of decompress. And so she can kind of sense that he's catching an attitude. She ends up falling asleep. She thought she was just going to take a nap. She ended up sleeping throughout the entire night. She ended up waking up to a text message that said like, okay, that's enough sleeping now. And she's just like, what the hell? She text messages him. She's like, hey, I'm sorry. I was so tired. I ended up sleeping. Hope you're okay. He ends up responding with this dry ass, just emotionless like response, you know? And it kind of like turned her off. She was like, if there's a problem, like say it, don't punish me for it, you know? So she actually ended up ghosting him. They didn't talk for like 2 weeks after that. She was just like, the hell, like it's early in the game. In Love Island terms, it's early days. So she was like, yeah, I'm out of here. So during those few weeks that they weren't talking, she ended up muting him on all social media. So she didn't interact with any of his content. But him, on the other hand, he's liking her stories. He's watching them. Like, he doesn't care, right? So she ends up tweeting something along the lines of like, my husband would never, you know? In hindsight, she's thinking like, that was actually my intuition telling me to like dip. I should have just like listened to those first few red flags, right? It's the week before Christmas. He ends up reaching out to her and saying like, hey, are you good? And she's like, yeah, I'm good. Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, we haven't spoken. And she's like, well, why would I want to entertain the last message you sent me? Like, it was so dry, you know? And he like explained his side of the story. She explained her side of the story. And they ended up like talking things out and rekindling. And he basically told her like, you know, in his psychology bag, he's like, oh, we need to talk through our problems. You can't just walk away. You can't just ghost people. Like, you know, you should talk to them. So they went back to talking every day. And they only had a few rocky moments after that. She said she caught an attitude with him at some point. But outside of that, it was smooth sailing. Kenji says that one thing that she actually really liked about him was how much she used to pour into the, you know, relationship and just really be present. She felt like, you know, she was getting to know his friends. Like he was introducing them when they were on FaceTime. Like she felt integrated in his life. She felt like a priority. And that's something that's big to her because of the way that her trauma is set up. She needs that constant communication. If you go ghost, if you go dark, she was saying it very much triggers her. She said that they had conversations about marriage, children, their future, all types of things. She very much felt like the conversations that they were having were conversations that people have that lead towards dating, right? And so one day he hits her up and he's like, hey, I'm gonna go on a hike today. And she's like, okay, cool. He doesn't hit her up until like 7 o'clock her time. And she's like, what the hell? That same day, somebody ended up liking an old photo of hers on her Twitter. And it was like a silhouette of her body. So she reposted that silhouette photo on her Instagram stories with like some title that said like oldie but goodie. So he finally hits her up and they're talking. And then he makes some little joke basically saying like, you posting that picture on your Instagram stories makes me going on this hike with this other woman not even look that bad. And she's like, what? Immediately triggered. At this point, she's pissed off. She's like, oh, so you were with another woman and then now you're making a little joke and you didn't hit me up all day long? Like, you know, it's looking really sus, right? He's immediately like, oh my God, hit me up, starts calling her, starts texting her, trying to convince her to get on the phone with him. He finally gets her on the phone and she basically tells him like, these are my needs from communication. Like, you can't go ghost. Even if you're going to be busy that day, at some point, I need you to hit me up, check in, something, you know, it doesn't have to be this long conversation. He basically tells her, it's no problem. I can do that for you. And then he tries to reassure her that it wasn't just him and another woman. It was like a group of them and nobody else was on their phone. So he felt like he shouldn't be on his phone. That was his excuse for not hitting her up all day. She really felt like he walked her through her emotions and really helped her see like what the actual problem was and be able to talk it out. And he told her at one point, he was like, you know, you getting really upset about me not hitting you up is like showing that you actually like me and you have feelings for me, right? And at that point, because she was still a little upset, she didn't want to like confirm what he was saying, but she kind of could feel it too. Like he's basically sitting there trying to convince her like, yo, I'm trustworthy, I'm not gonna hurt you. And she's like, I don't know if I can trust you like that. He gets so offended. He's just like, I would never do that to you. Like, what are you even talking about? I don't even have time to deal with 4 women. And she said he's a person of semantics, so maybe it wasn't 4 women that he was dealing with, but it was definitely 2. And so she's sitting there like, okay, like I don't know your life like that, but like bet, like I'm gonna take your word for it. At this point, she's bought in. She's really excited about this relationship. She gets on her close friends on Instagram and shares like, hey, I think I found a great guy, They start asking questions, like it becomes this thing, right? So they start going back and discussing like, okay, like we're not going to meet in Wyoming, Wisconsin, whatever, like it's just, you know, too much. She basically tells him like, let's just meet in Philadelphia. It's a 2-hour drive for her and he can fly out. And so she's like, okay, bet. And he was going to do like all expense paid trip for her, so she was going to just have to, you know, show up kind of thing. And so she's thinking about all the costs and she's like, yo, you're gonna fly in on inaugural weekend, MLK weekend, like that's a lot going on in, you know, this area already. Like it's gonna be really expensive. Like the tickets were $800, $1,000, you know, on top of hotels, rentals, all the other things that he was gonna have to pay for. So she's trying to tell him like, if you wanna come another weekend, you can. If you wanna come to Virginia instead, it's gonna be cheaper. She's literally trying to convince him to like save money. And he's just like, no, like I'm coming. I wanna go to the Eagle store. I wanna get you a jersey. I wanna get me a jersey. And so she's like, you know, tickets would actually even be cheaper if you flew out on Monday. Like, why don't you just fly out on Monday, January 20th. And he's just like, I don't know. And she's like trying to push him. Like, another thing he didn't think about was like, even if they were going to go to the official Eagles bar and have like a meal there and watch the game, he's thinking the game is going to start at 1 and he's going to be able to fly out by like 4 or 5. But he's not thinking like, this is East Coast. This is East Coast time. Like the game starts at 4 and it's not going to end till like 7 and you're not going to be able to catch a flight until like at least 8. And so like she's just telling him like, there's so many reasons for you to push back to Monday. He eventually is just like straight up like, no, I'm not doing Monday. I'm flying out on the 19th and that's the end of it. And she's like, okay. So in the midst of them planning this trip for this weekend, she would have been driving out to Philadelphia this past weekend. And so right before that, right, the fires in LA broke out and he's out here in LA. And so he basically ends up getting evacuated and she's very worried. But through this whole ordeal of being evacuated and having to like find a place to stay, he's very communicative with her, right? And he's like keeping her in the loop and she feels like obviously very worried, very stressed. She can only do so much, but she's trying her best not to overwhelm him with messages and give him space. But through all this, he still communicated with her. So she's very happy. Now he gets evacuated a second time. And it's when he gets evacuated the second time that everything hits the fan. One thing that she noticed when he moved to the second location was that everybody around him all of a sudden became non-binary pronouns. She's like, everybody's non-binary around you? Like, okay, like that's cool. But in her mind, she's thinking like, why aren't you being specific? Or is that the case? Like, are you actually around a bunch of non-binary people? And so she's trying to figure that out. In the midst of that, she's like, hey, let's FaceTime. And he's like, oh, I have to step out. And then that's red flag number 2. She's like, why do you all of a sudden have to step out to get on FaceTime? But she's, putting an order for 7-Eleven for him. She puts in the order. He goes and picks it up. And then when he walks back in, they're on FaceTime the whole time while he's going there, coming back. Right when he gets to the front door, he abruptly hangs up on her. And she's like, what the hell? And then he text messages her and he's like, oh, sorry to rush you off. And she's like, oh, I was just, calling to say thank you for like, reaching out and keeping me updated. And he's just like, yeah, no problem. So at this point, she's just like, this is like really odd. He's never had to step out to talk to me. And then he starts going to this like place called Cyber Games. And he starts saying like, oh, I need to get like out the house. I just feel so useless. I'm not like helping anybody. I just need to like get out of the house and get out of people's way. And so he started going to this place and gaming there. And the next few days are fine. He's FaceTiming her from the car, really not in the house anymore. So she's, again, peeping all of this. So this becomes a routine over the next few days. He goes to Cyber City. She sends him some food because he was saying that he was so stressed he wasn't eating. So she wanted to make sure she was supporting him any way that she could. And so she's trying to tell him like, hey, like, I think we should postpone this trip. Like, I don't think we should do it. Like, this whole, LA fire is going to be looming over your head. It's going to, shadow our experience. I want you to be fully present. And you don't even know if your apartment is safe. Like, we should push back. And he's telling her like, no, I want to come out there. Like, don't even worry about that, And so she's like, okay, like, that's fine. So she goes ahead and books all of her beauty appointments, hair and makeup. Girlies, you know what I'm talking about. Like, all the necessary beauty appointments needed, right? And so at this point, she's like, you know what? I only did a little bit of a deep dive on this guy. I need to do like a actual deep dive and really get down into it and see like if there's anything that I find. So she looks him up on Twitter and she's going down his tweets and she doesn't see anything weird at first. Then she starts noticing this one girl constantly come up in his mentions like over and over again. And she's like, oh, what the hell, whatever. She just keeps scrolling. And then she starts seeing her even more. So she's like, let me just hit this girl's name. The guy that Kenji was dating, his name is Montez, right? I don't know why I didn't say his name until now. I think I just didn't care to. We're just going to call this girl influencer. And she notices that this girl is an influencer. Quite a large following, quite active online. She finds out that the same day that Montez went to go watch Wicked and this one other movie, this girl also went to go watch those same movies. And then the influencer tweeted and said, it's all fun and games to date a gym rat that's 6'3" until they get hungry. And Kenji's sitting there like, funny. I'm dating a 6'3" gym rat and he gets very hungry as well. So now she's just thinking like, oh, this is about to be bad. This is about to be really bad. She also had noticed that the girl was posting pictures in the passenger seat of a Tesla, which is exactly the car that Montez drives. The final straw for Kenji is when the influencer posted Montez's dog and she was just like, oh man, this is a wrap. So she ends up going on the girl's Instagram and then they have so many more photos there together and she DMs the girl. She's like, let me just hit this girl up. And she hit her with the hey boo message and she was like, are you dating this guy? Like, what's going on? And the influencer responded back and said, yeah, we've been together for 5 years. We're actually celebrating our 5th year anniversary on January 20th. Ring a bell? And so at this point, they start, exchanging notes. Kenji sends her a bunch of screenshots and the influencer basically says, hey, can you give me time to address this with him first? Like, let me confront him first. And Kenji's like, 100%, like, do your thing, girl. Kenji told the influencer, like, I know you guys are going through a lot, like the fires and all. Like, I'm sorry that I have to tell you about this, He's assuming that, the influencer confronted Montez while he was still at Cyber City. And then all of a sudden, she started getting calls from Montez. And then Kenji basically screenshotted all those calls and sent it over to the influencer and said, hey, he's trying to reach out to me. The influencer ended up reaching out to Kenji and being like, Montez said that, he never cared about you. It was always about just being intimate, and like it was just like a fling kind of thing, you know? And so Kenji's sitting there like, wow, like all those conversations we had, all those hours we spoke on the FaceTime and all of that, not only did you have a girlfriend this whole time, but now you're telling her like it never even mattered. And so she's like, yeah, he also just left right now, just let me know if he like ends up trying to contact you again, right? Of course he ends up trying to contact Kenji. She sends it over to the influencer, and she basically tells her like, hey, you deserve better, like you deserve somebody that's like for you, that's not going to treat you like this, like trying to tell the influencer like, you know, I hope you leave kind of thing. And you know, Kenji just like kind of left it at that, and she's telling us like, I'm pretty sure she's not going to leave him. It doesn't sound like or feel like this is the first time she caught him cheating. She definitely seems like she's going to stay with him. Kenji did say that she was hurt inside over the situation, but that she, you know, is eventually going to move on. I think a lot of people in the comments were telling her like, oh, I would have never, like the red flags were so clear, but she said, you know, you don't know until you're in the situation, and a lot of things for me were lining up the things that I was looking for, and it just, you know, ended up being what it was, and that's fine. If you go to the last video that she just posted, you can see the message that she sent him. She basically just told him like, you're a liar, like I can't believe you told me all these things and like didn't even mean them. Like she basically just told him off and then went about her life as she should. You know, dating is hard. Like putting yourself out there, it's always like a possibility of being hurt, right? Like nobody can be like, I'm never gonna hurt you, and you take them for face value. Like you're taking them with not a grain of salt, like a whole pitcher of salt, right? Because you just don't know, like people are capable of anything. And I always tell you guys, like the two biggest things is like trust your gut, which she says in her story, even like she wishes she had trusted her intuition, trust her gut. Those things are really important. And then the second thing that I really wanted to point out with the story is like this idea of like time. There's not enough time in the world to really get to know somebody. You know, you just have to not rush the crush. Like my favorite psychic says that. Don't rush the crush. Like allow things to grow organically. But outside of that, sending you a lot of love, Kenji. I'm sorry that this happened to you.